everybody, to Getting Gritty with It. This is episode 7. This is an epic episode. We have a legend in Josh Katz with us, but my good old buddy, pal, Yariv. Man, listen, I'm jonesing at the bit. I'm about to start a dance, but you know what? I'm going to take it over to you. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing really well, buddy. I'm happy for another week. Happy we made it through the virus.
Are you wearing your mask and gloves?
Oh, man. No, I refuse.
No, we all have to joke, and it's not a joke about that stuff, but I don't know. Like, we're inside right now. Are you wearing a mask and gloves?
No, absolutely not. As you can see on video, like, no thank you. If you're watching this, I'm good. I'm at home. I'm not going to be wearing that stuff at home. Good.
Listen, this man with us, our guest, needs no introduction. His name is Josh Katz. He's an excellent writer with us for FlyersNittyGritty.com. And I tell you, this guy is a prospect guru. He knows a lot about prospects, and we'll get to that later. Trust me, he's jonesing at the bit. You look at him looking around there and everything else, man. This guy's just ready to jump through the screen here. Josh, what's up, my man? Tell us a little bit about yourself for those who may not know you, and please tell us where they can find you.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, name's Josh. You can find me at Josh Katz Philly on Twitter, and you can find my stuff always at Flyers Nitty Gritty, or at Flyers Nitty. Okay. Yeah, huge draft guy. I've always been part of making mock drafts and looking at different pieces for our hometown Flyers, but also been keeping up with the team since before I could even walk.
Nice. Yeah. Well, it shows by all the stuff he's got in the background, right? I mean, the guy.
You know what? That's a good point. Look at this legendary stuff he's got back there. There's an Ovechkin Russian jersey. Hello, everybody. Oh. Any Russians out there? God, I feel like I am right now. I love the nation. And I love everything. Ovechkin, he's a class act. And
he's one of my favorite players of all time.
Right, exactly, and he should be.
Yeah.
He's a great player, but he's a class act in the locker room. Yariv, you've been around him a little bit.
Yeah.
You know he's a likable guy in that locker room.
I've seen him. Oh, Ovechkin, I've never been in the locker room around him. I've seen him. I passed him in the hallway. Unfortunately, I've never gotten a chance to talk to Ovechkin. Hopefully that does happen someday, but we'll see. We're still early. We're still getting there. We're getting there one day. And one day he'll come talking to me. No, yeah, kidding. But yeah, no, it'd be awesome. We were talking before the show. Josh is a big fan of left-wing goal scorers. We see the line A. We see Ovechkin on there. I can't see who that is. That a Giroux jersey or what is that?
Giroux right next to it. Then Roenick. Then Jack Hansen. Then Shea Theodore.
All right. Yeah, I got that Theodore. Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, that's one of those jerseys. I love the gold on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly.
Just to give people a background here, Josh left the sport because he had to start working. It wasn't because he wasn't good enough, all right? So, you know what I mean?
Retired early.
Let's go with that. With that for sure. Retired while I had a chance.
Yeah, he quit while he was ahead. You know, he was like, why? Why even, you know?
Exactly.
When there's so much. I
could just look at drafts instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's get down to it. We have a lot to talk about, but I wanted to start off and say, prayers and thoughts are with Canada and the Humboldt Broncos. This is their 2-year anniversary today, and what an unbelievable tragedy. Yariv, if you want to share some thoughts about Humboldt.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of interesting to think about. Like, it's something. It feels like it's so distant memory now with all the craziness that happens in the world. But for a lot of those people that. That's never stopped affecting them. I think that's still a tragedy for that entire area. And, just like this is going to affect the rest of the world, that tragedy affected that place. And I think large portions of Canada, we still see it today. I think tragic story. I know, it doesn't seem like there's much good that comes out of it, but, I'm sure there's some silver lining out there. But ultimately, just sad tragedy, man. It really is.
It's a good time to remember it. Like, always look it back and see what was built off of that. Yeah. That kind of like the teamwork and the fan base that came up really helped out everyone through that tragedy. Really shows the union that the hockey community has.
Right. And what did you think about the Flyers treating the Humboldt the way they did, Josh, in terms of like Ron Hextall with Ryan Strashinsky. I think I pronounced his name correct. If I mispronounce it, Ryan, I apologize. There was a picture that was tweeted today by myself, for that matter, that I had on my phone from Zach Hill when Ryan visited the Flyers in 2018. Ron Hextall was a big proponent of bringing Ryan and as many Humboldt players in there. Andrew McDonald cannot be forgotten. He offered his home, to Ryan, and what a class act he was, as long as he was recuperating and treatments. What are some of your thoughts on?
You took the words right out of my mouth there with class act. That's exactly what I was going to say. I thought the entire team really brought together the meaning of like really showing support towards something that really wasn't like something that was expected. Like it came out of nowhere. I remember reading the tweet, it happened, and the entire hockey community in the world was shaken. So to see our team and a bunch of other teams really like step in was really beautiful and really nice to see. I'm really, really proud that we're stepping back 2 years later and can talk about it like a building block in the hockey world.
Yeah. And we will, and this will never be forgotten for hockey gurus ourselves, right? Everybody here in this room. Let's move on to some better news, I guess. They had a Board of Governors meeting at 3 p.m. today. Pretty much the meeting was status quo. It was a status update. Yariv and I have been heavily talking about neutral sites. We started that last week. We'll start it again this week. What are some neutral sites, Yariv, that you think the Flyers could play at? Could Voorhees be a possible site? Could maybe Tarkin Ice Rink? Or are we looking at bigger rinks like Winter Sport? Or, there was a mention of Manchester, New Hampshire, a rink there being, a proponent as a neutral site. If hockey reconvenes, do you think they play at a neutral site? And do you think that's being discussed at these meetings right now?
I think, yeah. I mean, listen, my assumption, I've listed this out from day one, ever since we found out of this news, that logistically it's possible. If this is true, I mean, people can double check me, so I apologize, not 100% true. But I believe that there are 5-minute tests out there for coronavirus. I think we'll probably even be able maybe to cut that down within a month or so and pretty much be able to know if somebody's infected, on the spot. That's funny. But,
excuse me. No, I just choked on some water.
It's all good. But yeah, pretty much. Right, I know. So essentially, if you can figure it out on the spot, logistically, there's a lot you can do. I don't think a neutral site would be here on the East Coast. I think there's a good chance that it would be somewhere. I don't know if it's away from people. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be it, but it's going to be wherever it's easiest to get the minimal viable crew and the players there, and to keep them safe, and to have a medical facility nearby, probably for testing, and in a case that somebody gets sick, they can be sent either to the hospital, but most likely they have to work out an arrangement with a hotel as well. Everything would have to be on site. Logistically, you could do it, but it would be a nightmare for the people involved, right? You'd have to avoid your family. You'd have to avoid most public situations. You would essentially just hunker down to play the playoffs. Having said that, I'm pretty sure everybody who would have the opportunity to do that would do that. I mean, I would do that. If you asked me to give up a month of my life to make sure the Stanley Cup happened, I would be there tomorrow. You know what I mean? I'm not everybody, but I'm sure they can find people to work it. I guarantee you majority of these players, as long as the Players Association comes to an agreement about their safety, I'm pretty sure a lot of them would want to compete. I can't say clear cut across the board, but I mean, I'm no scientist, but I would imagine most athletes would not care too much about a virus like this and would probably want to play, especially if there were solutions and medical precautions around. I think they would want to get it done. I think logistically it's 100% possible. Do I think it will happen? I don't know. I brought this up to you earlier today, Jamey. I mean, what happens if a team wins?
Yeah. Oh, great.
Nobody considers that, but what happens if there is a parade? Or not even just a parade, a riot, right? Because we know, I mean, I've been here for 2 separate championships in Philadelphia. There have been riots for both, fires, everything. You're talking about mass amounts of people together celebrating. It's kind of what we're trying to avoid. So I'm not saying that they're not going to have a season for that sheer reason. I'm not saying that the president has a problem with it, or that our city might have a problem with it, to be honest with you. But, at the end of the day, I think that's something that they're going to consider as well, as what kind of energy are we actually bringing forth? How is this really going to be overall as a product? Like if they're going to fake the sounds, are the players really going to be able to focus? Are they going to be ready to play? There's a lot of questions up in the air, and that's probably why they didn't answer anything. It's because they probably still don't know. Because I'll say this, and I'll pass it on, but I will say this, Jamey, we talked about this earlier. I do think with the opportunity to have everybody at home with no competition, especially when it comes to sports, I mean, you're talking about almost nothing, anything live. I mean, it's pretty much just Donald Trump or the news. There's nothing live on television right now. So if you can be a sports and everybody would watch, it would be the number one sport in the country, theoretically. I mean, you're talking about TV ratings, plus everybody's home at the same time. You could quadruple, maybe more, your TV revenues for the playoffs, could salvage a lot of the money lost over the games not played. So there's no way they're not considering that, and that's probably what they're holding on to, and probably why they haven't canceled the season. Logistically, I think they're still concerned about people's health, and I highly doubt that they're going to jump in that, even if money is of the issue. We've seen that. Like, companies are sacrificing money, so that's out the window. Nobody wants to be the one that got everybody sick. Nobody wants to be at fault for that. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. I think logistically it can get done, but it's really about safety and what the CDC recommends. That's my opinion.
That's honestly, there's some very good opinions. I'll chime in after Josh. Josh, do you want to piggyback off of Yariv? Do you have thoughts of your own that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback off Yariv in the fact that I agree that they jump on, if it happened, that they really thought this through and they could jump on the idea of quadrupling that revenue and it was safe enough to do it. They really would, but putting every player on the ice, like having the benches so close to each other and playing those games, even if it's a secluded area, you still have all the teams playing. So putting the players together, I feel like it's still not really, it's doing it for the sport, but it's not really keeping in the total safety, because each player, they're shoulder to shoulder on the bench. They're checking in the boards. You'd have to have a lower contact game, which is in turn lowers the real excitement of the game. Everyone loves hitting. Everyone loves high contact. So that's something to kind of look towards, but I could totally see them trying to find a way to bring it back, at least for the playoffs. I can agree, though, that there's nothing to watch on sports, because I was streak live betting on ESPN app, and I had to bet on the Masked Singer on TV. And if I have to do that one more time, I want sports back.
That's a good show, though.
It is a good show, but I don't want to be betting. I got it right.
Nice.
Did he?
Good for you.
What, the Christmas one? Or the new one?
What is it? Hold on, sorry.
There was one around Christmas where it ended, and it ended, and I forget who won, but I was like, wow, this is not a bad show, and I know that another one was about to be rolled out, so. But, yeah, Masked Singer, that's a good.
Technical difficulties.
You were going to say something?
Yeah. I think we might be losing Josh here for a second.
Yeah. So
I'll say one thing just to comment on Josh. What I was saying is that you have to pre-test everybody, obviously, prior. Keep them on site in the same hotel, same location. So it'd be no intermingling. Yes, I mean, you'd have to touch. That's not even a question. I mean, you're absolutely going to be, but there's going to have to be a point where people go back to touching each other again.
There we go.
It's just, is it the right time? And I think that's what Josh's point. You're back. Awesome. Hey, Josh.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I think I lost you guys for a minute.
Yeah, it's okay. I was commenting on what you're saying when you're not around, so just behind your back.
Okay, good. No, that's fine. I'm glad.
Sorry.
Yeah, I really thought about this up and down, and I was trying to think of a location on, around our surrounding area that would be a perfect destination. And one of them I did come up with was the PPL Center. And the reason is because they had the hotel attached to the stadium. So if they needed to choose a location,
Nice.
if the PPL Center could, possibly, move and make some moves and stuff from their shows and what they got going on. Yeah, maybe they have some different shows. Maybe they have some different concerts going on. I think that would be a perfect host, because the hotel literally the players could leave the rink and go straight up the elevator to the hotel. That's where Mike McKenna, I'm going to get into a story here. Mike McKenna used to stay inside that hotel because his family, didn't come over yet and they didn't have an apartment. So for about a month to 2 months after he was shipped down from the Flyers to the Phantoms, that's where Mike McKenna stayed a lot, was that hotel. And, and that was, the blue collar aspect of the sport. Here it comes a guy, like Mike McKenna, a journeyman who came off the bus, of like a junior hockey team or whatever, wherever, and was like, hey, he was like playing in beer leagues. Hey, you want to come play? And Mike's sort of, hey, why not? I'll give it a whirl. And look, he made his career as a successful, goalie. Whether it's in the NHL, whether it's the AHL or whatever, he became a successful goaltender in the sport of hockey. It doesn't matter if it's AHL or NHL. They're both professional leagues. Of course, the goal was to continuously play in the NHL. So I was sorry to go off on tangent there. But the one site that I thought of was Lehigh. And I do agree with you, Yariv, and Josh for that matter. I think that these, if they do reconvene, that there will be some type of testing. You cannot leave. You will be quarantined like people are now to their homes. They will be quarantined, to the PPL center. Let's just use that as an example. You cannot leave or go. They have concession stands there, where you could eat at. Of course, it's a hotel, so I'm sure I don't know about the eateries in there, but I would presume there's some type of eateries, whether there or you could order out or something to that line.
A lot of problems, like you're saying.
Problems.
Yeah.
Leading to more people coming in, possibly infect. Possibly.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Delivery men, delivery women, whoever's coming to deliver the product, chance they could potentially have it. They may not potentially have it. You're using different containers, to ship this food, and who's preparing the food could possibly have it.
What a mess. What a mess.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
even thinking about it just out loud, right?
I know.
It's that all of this has to be taken into account. So they are not only putting players' lives at risk, they could be potentially, eventually putting their families at risk whenever the season ends. And more importantly, Yariv, you hit the nail on the head there, man. That was like a mic drop. You should have dropped your mic on the floor, with the crowds, because you cannot tell me that no one in the city of Philadelphia, if the Flyers were to win that cup and beat the heck out of the Penguins, beat whoever else was standing in their way, beat the Lightning, beat whomever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think, and take a page out of a rock book.
It would be one of the most epic riots ever, though.
I'm going to tell you,
pandemic,
no sports.
like,
that's what
yes,
with
now
no
I'm
sports,
convincing myself.
there's going to be.
Kidding.
You think every single person, if they can, people in jazzy chairs, wheelchairs are going to be at this parade, man. I'm telling you, like,
wouldn't be one, right? There wouldn't be a parade, right? There would be no city sanctioned parade, and then you have to realize that people will
We'd
not
make a parade.
There would be a young crowd, a very young crowd. There's going to be an elderly crowd. There's going to be, because they have been out for so long.
You would reschedule.
What I'm saying is that everyone is equal here. We're all quarantined the same way, whether you're elderly, young, middle-aged or whatever, or, like our generation, 30s and 19-year-old, like Josh and stuff. It doesn't matter what age. Every single age group is going to be at this parade, and it's going to be millions of people. It's going to be like 3 to 4 million. And I'm not talking about the parade. I'm talking about reconvening in the streets and stuff. People are going to come.
That's probably a little too high of a number, but it's, let's say, like even 1 million people, right? Which would be like something for the Eagles. So let's just say it's not 1 million people. Let's say it's 100,000 people, okay, which is small. So as I'm saying, I've seen 100,000 people running into Center City. After there's a lot of people in large cities, and that doesn't include like people just looking to riot, or maybe the other team loses and they decide to riot because they're pissed because they're stuck at home and they had one hope this year, and then that's taken. Listen, I'm not saying that's the NHL's responsibility. It's not. It's not their responsibility.
Right.
But there's no way that they're not considering part of this, right? I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe that's not important to them.
Sure.
It's a lot of money. Again, potentially a lot of money, and they've lost a ton of money.
Right,
And if there's a way to do it logistically, though, safely, I think they would look at it, but I really don't see it happening. I will say that. My opinion is the season's over, and we need to start talking about the draft. We need to start talking about how we're going to start virtualizing all of that, the offseason, because I'm ready to go. I'm ready to observe. I'm ready to watch. There's a lot to get excited about. We can do it virtually. That we can know. That we know we can do safely. We can draft players. We can do everything from home. They can do awesome stuff with coverage now that they've never done. Like home interviews with players. They can do interviews with GMs. They can do tight interviews with like an entire GM room. Who knows? But they can they can come up with cool and interesting ideas. That's what I want to hear at this point. Really.
Not to go off hockey or anything, but the NFL draft has gone completely virtual, so I can totally see that going into any other league.
Did they announce anything? Any kind of special events around it?
For the NFL draft?
Yeah.
They put out a statement today that the entire draft is going to be done everyone's going to be home, all GMs and players and head coaches, and it's just all going to be televised virtually through like video chats or even done in an animation.
It is so good you brought up the NFL, Josh, because that's exactly where I was headed.
And the NHL loves to model them, right?
Yes, and they are watching the NFL to see what they're doing. Like if the NFL cancels the OTAs, I think it's a high probability the NHL is just going to scratch the season and say it's not going to happen. You're talking about not saying that the NHL isn't profitable.
The season, or you're talking about the playoffs?
No. The NFL has a thing called the OTAs after a draft. They're to work out with quarterback, running back to familiarize the rookies with the system, and stuff like that. If they cancel those particular
like rookie camp.
It's yes, like a developmental camp, rookie camp. That's sort of like what it is.
When are they usually scheduled?
May, like mid to early May, because the draft is usually last week of April. So
that's
it's
early.
May
Yeah,
to
that's
June.
early. That's early.
So
that's early. It's possible.
If the NFL cancels those OTAs, I really do think it is a high probability that the NHL then says, you know what, we have to scratch this season and just put an asterisk next to it. I think that is my target date is like mid-May.
Okay.
They are clearly watching the NFL and seeing what they're doing. To mock Pierre LeBrun, who's fantastic, the NHL is still hoping to have a lower down form of the draft, a moderated, form of the draft, not to just do it all virtual. So although both are being talked about, but the NHL is hoping to do a modified form is, I guess, the proper word is what I'm, trying to get at here. So, I mean, this isn't all doom and gloom. It doesn't mean that the NHL season ends today. I think another interesting date that we have to keep in the back of our heads is April 30th, because the President of the United States, hopes to have the country up and running, by April. That is a target date. It was originally this Easter weekend. It was supposed to be April 12th. It was been pushed back to April 30th. And Yariv and I talked about that. It's about business-like, people, because businesses have to have sort of a target date to expect customers or to see, some type of life.
They need it. They need a date to work around. Everybody does. Society does, actually, in general. Even if it'll keep getting moved. Otherwise, it feels like there's no hope. You can't just say we're out indefinitely.
Yeah.
You need a target date. Even if you don't hit it, you need a target date. I agree. Could be the 30th,
But I think mid-May is
aggressive. Yeah, I agree with you, Jamey.
I think mid-May is the ultimate decision, pull the plug or not. And I think it's
on the playoffs. You mean
on the playoffs?
On the season and playoffs. Yes, I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
Oh, the
finishing
rest
the
of
season and leading to the playoffs.
Sorry, I forgot that there was even a regular season, because in my mind I'm like, oh, that's not even like, why would you even bother?
Wait, so I had us winning.
Yeah, I would start the play now.
Winning streak. I had us maybe. Listen, you don't even want to know what I thought about these last 13 games. I had us going 12-1, and I don't care. I could care less what people think. People want to disagree with me, fine. I agree with that. But I thought so highly of this team. They should have beat the heck out of the damn Bruins. But, Tuukka Rask stood in their way and just played a hell of a, game on his 33rd birthday. I mean, what are you going to do? Right? Josh, you're chomping at the bit, man.
What is it?
I said you're chomping at the bit. What do you think about Tuukka?
Tuukka, honestly, I think he's one of the best goaltenders of all time. People hate on him all the time, but I think that he will, once his season's over, maybe the best goaltender now. Sorry, not the best goaltender of all time. He stands on his head game in and game out, and he does not get the love that he deserves on that Boston team. I do not like Boston. I will never like Boston. I love when the Flyers beat Boston 4-3 in 2010 in that whole series. But I think Tuukka Rask will forever go down as the most underrated player for the Boston Bruins. He had the best stats this season. I mean, if you look at it, he had a sub 2.5 GAA and like over a 910, 920 save percentage. So I assume that he's only going to elevate his game with the team around him, which isn't good for the Flyers. It's not good in the way of the Flyers, but
I think he's like a Claude Giroux type player, and stuff like that. Very underappreciated. Yariv and I talk about this all the time. There's lots of Flyers I think that are underappreciated and stuff. So, but
the entire team is underappreciated. I get texts from my brothers every day who he cares too much about power rankings. But he tells me, the Flyers are being underappreciated on the rankings. They're only 7th.
Yeah, you're making this guy's day right here, okay? Yariv is just like, damn, all right, yeah, see all that?
Oh yeah, you got to give up on the power rankings. I stopped caring about all that. I like what you say about Tuukka because I do agree he's underappreciated because I think people underappreciate consistency. I think they look for flash, they look for Nikita Kucherov, who don't get me wrong, is freaking awesome, but they look at his one incredible top of the league season. They go, he's the best player in the league. Then he doesn't do it the next year. Then I hear crickets, and now they're going to do the same thing to Leon Draisaitl because he's going to have this monster year, and then next year McDavid's going to pass him and be like, I guess he's not that good. No, he's freaking incredible. It's just
he'd be a 1C on every other team that doesn't have the best generational player in this game.
It's not just that. Is that every player fluctuates in their output. It's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, it happened to Ovechkin. I mean, again, it depends on how your team is doing. It depends who your coach is. It depends on a lot of factors. It's not just one thing. I mean, if a guy
it's not just one.
Yeah, if a guy is just majority of the time excellent, like I think here Fleury, you got Fleury on the wall over there. I mean, that is a guy who obviously we watched as a Penguin. That sucked. That's a guy who got a lot of ridicule, right, for being inconsistent. But he did it for the Penguins, did it for the Vegas Knights. I would say he is very consistent, and you'll look at his numbers as a whole right over his career, and they're fantastic. And that is usually a measure of a man's career, not because you didn't like him over the past 30, 40 games. Sorry, but they play 1,000. You know what I mean?
Dave Tippett did a great job. It's great that you mentioned coaching. I think Dave Tippett has done a phenomenal job in Edmonton, much like Alain Vigneault here, has changed around that program. It is very hard for Alain Vigneault to compete with Dave Tippett, even though the Flyers were in influx, last year, and we know how bad the season was last year for, Phil, obviously because we all write for Flyers and that, but I'm just saying, it was a very bad season for us, but imagine what was going on in Edmonton, and to stick with that team, pretty much they didn't have a fire sale, which was very surprising, and they brought in a coach, Dave Tippett, and man, boy,
good coach.
He's a great coach.
He's who I wanted the Flyers.
He's a player's coach.
And I did too. He was one of my Flyers too. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we would have done well with either Tippett or Vigneault because they are sort of similar coaches, defensive first style coaches. Play defense, play a full 5-man defense. I'm not talking about a 2-man defense. 5-man. Everybody's playing damn D. You're playing. That's it. You don't play D. You're on the bench, and that's how it goes. Lose ice time. And that was proven, with, I'm not saying Voracek and Vigneault butted heads, at first, and I'm not saying JVR and, Vigneault butted heads and whatnot. I would say that there was something going on in terms of like, hey, I expect more out of you. I expect you to play, a two-way game. And listen, Jake put in the best two-way game of his career, in my opinion.
Well, he challenged them. He just challenged them. He called them out on their shit. I'm sorry, but that's and I love the players, and it's not that they needed it, but he's not trying to do it because they needed it. He's trying to get more out of them. He wants more. He wants 110%. He doesn't want 100%. I want to win a championship. I need 110. I need you guys to carry the team. Like, that's literally the conversation. Even if they didn't need to, I would want them to have that mindset because they're kids, right? We had enough talent, but if they have that mindset, they have that mindset with the combination of the talent around them, and they feel like no matter what, every single time they have to leave it all out on the ice. I mean, that's how you get a season like Leon Draisaitl. That's how you're telling me that guy doesn't play every shift like he wants to score a goal? Like, he wants to dominate. He wants to dominate. That's the type of attitude you have to be that type of athlete. You have to go out there and want to win. Always want to win. You have to be like, I don't know if people recognize who Michael Jordan was, but he was competing with guys when he was retired. I remember I watched a video of him. Somebody was talking smack to him or whatever at a practice, and he was retired at the time. He challenged the guy to a one-on-one game. The guy was like a high first-round pick. He embarrassed him in front of everybody and then left. And the guy was retired. It's like he just had to do it. He's like, no. He's like, I'm Michael Jordan. I'm going to beat you right now. Like, even though I'm retired, I'm going to beat you.
What was his name? Josh Katz?
I think that might have been. I don't know. Not Josh Katz. I don't remember the guy's name. Anybody who knows basketball would know that story much better than I do. I'm terrible at basketball. Don't trick me with Josh Katz. Josh Katz is a sweetheart. He's a good man. He would never challenge Michael Jordan. That's blasphemy.
No. Honestly, I have more smarts than to challenge Michael Jordan at a game that I played 3 years at a sixth grade level and was really the worst player on my basketball team.
I know that feeling.
Well, I'm terrible. Noah's good. He beats me every time at this basketball game here. Dude loves basketball. He picks basketballs up, but he also loves Carter Hart, so that's cool. And he's a Cooch Patrick now. He's saying it all, man. And TK, of course, huh?
Well, I was just thinking. I was like, maybe it's time for the next topic. Actually, the big topic that we wanted to talk about. Yes.
This is a huge topic that we keep, not forgetting, but we talk so much and just have a ball. RFA talk. There are 4 RFAs for the Philadelphia Flyers this season. Will Chuck Fletcher, is he trying to sign these players or not? Being said, we are, all quarantined. This is a good time to do some in-house cleaning, you would think. I know, he signed, Wade Allison, Tanner Lazinski has been signed. I know he's been talking to agents from Linus Hogberg and David Bernhardt. Whether they sign or not is to remain, out of the question. Wyatt Kalnick remains in question. We'll get to him in a minute. But let's start with these 4 RFAs. You have Nolan Patrick, Phil Myers, NAK, and Oscar Lindblom. Josh, lead off with you. What do you think about these 4 RFAs? Is Chuck Fletcher trying to sign? Can you give us some numbers? What do you have to talk about in terms of these 4 RFAs for the Flyers?
If I was in Chuck Fletcher's shoes, I'd be on signing all 4 of them. Like, if you think about Nolan Patrick is an immediate, that's got to be done before. I get that he didn't play this season. I get that if the season reconvenes, there's a chance, but we went over that it's probably not going to happen. But you definitely got to bring him back to a deal, but I think Fletcher is going to bring him back on a 1 to 2 year deal, a prove-it-year deal, almost like what you see with players like Laine. Laine got 6. Obviously, Nolan Patrick isn't Patrick Laine, but Laine got 2 years at I want to say like just over $6.2 million. And for someone of his caliber, you would think you would want to lock him up long term, but he really hasn't proven himself. So I think with what Chuck Fletcher would like to do, if I was Chuck Fletcher, I would sign him for 2 years, 1 to 2 years, really have him prove himself if he gets over this injury. And if he really shows that he's that true number 2, number 1 type centerman, maybe even number 3 behind Kevin Hayes and Giroux, who can really, or Couture even, who can fluctuate, then sign him to an even longer term deal and build from there. But the other 3, Nicholas Aube-Kubel, Phil Myers, and Oscar Lindblom, definitely need to be signed for that bottom 6 and top. Or I guess Lindblom, I could see him hitting the top 6 next year. Judging by if everything goes well, everything in his updates have been nothing but, as the whole team says, beautiful. But if we can re-sign him and really get him back to playing, I could see him going back up to his previous 20 goal pace and really chipping in second, third line.
Now, in terms of Lindblom, what do you think? Do they automatically re-sign him and get him some benefits, in your opinion? Just trying to get your opinion, so the viewers.
I wouldn't sign him to a super lucrative. I would give him more than $3 million, but I would give him signing bonus. I would give him performance bonuses. I'd give him maybe even games played bonuses, depending on really how this whole recovery process goes out for him. Because he's become I don't want to say the glory of our team, but the team, ever since this all happened, he's been the reason that something the guys can play for. And if he's out there playing with the guys, it's more of a Cinderella story than anything we've seen in the Flyers long time. So having him on the team will really give a boost. And I think giving him a nice contract that doesn't hurt the cap situation and also keeps us in contention where we have options to bring in another guy or even move some players around. It's nice. Hopefully everything goes well with him.
Yeah. Yariv, do you have anything to add off Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I see things differently. But, it's obviously all up in the air, too. I don't want to say that I know exactly what's going to happen, and that Josh is wrong in any kind of way, right? Because it's still so up in the air. None of us really know, right? You're talking about Lindblom, and as you're saying it, you're like, well, assuming everything goes well with his, treatment, it's we really don't know. My assumption is
behind closed doors.
Right. Well, and I mean, as it should be, right, at the same time. But I mean, my assumption is this: Myers is an easy, obvious re-signing. I would give him. I would give him term if he would accept it. I think he probably wouldn't want term. I think he'd probably want to bet on himself because he's really good. And I have a player profile video coming out on him pretty soon, and I talk about that and I break down kind of what I think about him. But go on later. But I do think he would get a nice contract. I would get maybe a 2-year contract at $2 million, $2.5 million just to start, just because he hasn't put up the consistent numbers. But eventually he's going to be expensive. So if they want term, they're going to probably have to give him a little bit more. But right now, I think they can get him relatively cheap if they keep him in the short term, just because he hasn't hit that level yet. But he's due. So I mean, personally, I would just lock him up. I don't know. You got a lot of guys that are kind of sitting out there, but I would start these conversations early. I mean, NAK would be relatively cheap at this point. It'd be a short-term contract, probably bet on himself, maybe 1 to 2 years. Could probably get him for $1 million.
1 to 2 million.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd probably give him 2 years at $1 million a year. If he would accept that, that would be awesome. Or 1 for 1, I could see him getting something like that. He had a really good season, so I would definitely want to keep him around and see if he could be better. Patrick. I mean, personally, I think there's plenty of time for that, and I would just wait. Maybe they're just waiting for him to recover. But I would sign him. Again, with him, it's just really about him coming. But I already think he's a cornerstone type of player. I think was already playing above a third line center pace. So at the rate that he was progressing, he's well on his way to being a top line center in the NHL, in my opinion. I have a player profile video coming out on him pretty soon too. That will be done soon, and I'll go through that a little bit more. But I do still see him as a really high ceiling player. Not that you're saying no to that, Josh. I just mean I kind of banking on them giving him a large contract. But I do agree with you that there's going to be a hesitation here in the beginning to see how much. But I don't know if they're going to hesitate to give him term. I think they wanted to give him term, but he wants a lot.
I feel like he's going to want to have a prove-it year.
Well, I think Laine wanted a lot of money. And I don't think he plays a two-way game to give him that. I think that was hey, we want you to change your game up slightly, and then we'll give you $10 million a year, because they want him to be a cornerstone player, and he's not there yet. So I don't think Patrick was even in the consideration of what Laine's done, right? So he wouldn't even be getting that kind of contract, but he would get maybe a 4-year deal, assuming that I could see him getting something similar to what TK or what Lindblom. So Lindblom, obviously, biggest question. I mean, I want to see how his treatment goes. I would absolutely love to sign him for what you said, Josh. I mean, that would be amazing. I think he would actually be a little more expensive than that. Healthy,
I think
healthy,
he would,
healthy for sure.
That's the big,
right,
big in bold, underlined.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the health risk, I mean, I don't know what kind of contract he would get. I mean, from a strictly business POS type of mind, you give him a 1-year deal to make sure he's okay, and then you sign him. From a human element and the way I care about Oscar, well, that's what I would want to give him. I would want to give him enough, at least 2 years, to make sure he had enough to recover, pay for the 1 year where potentially he's not recovered, so he has insurance, he has a salary, and he can make a really good living not playing. And then the following year, you give him another year of insurance. And from there, I'd probably, if he didn't have a career, I would offer him a job with the Flyers personally. That's what I would do if I was GM. I mean, if I couldn't employ him on the ice, I would just employ him like as an employee. So that's something that I would consider. But that's in the long term. But obviously, if he's doing well in the treatment, I mean, yeah, I signed him. I signed him term. Yeah, I mean, it's Oscar Lindblom without a doubt. I mean, his two-way game is elite. I mean that honestly, as a two-way game, like the ability to play defense along the boards. There really are not many young players like him in the league. He is a special player in that aspect. So if we can get him back, I mean, I think he's a big piece to winning a championship. I would definitely give him.
You know what? His speed even got a little faster.
Yeah,
everything. He just became a confident player. Yes. And I want to give a little bit of kudos to Hackstall for even developing him a little bit. And yes, we could go back and forth and all, but I think Hackstall overall did a pretty solid job with Oscar Lindblom in particular. And, and AV has just thrived and just taken his game to another level because that's the way Oscar was. There were some things that Hackstall did to Oscar that I didn't particularly care for in terms of ice time and whatnot. However, he did get the bang for his buck from Oscar, though. So, and Oscar came to be a very, very good top six forward in the NHL, and I still think that he can be such. And I hope he's such, and I pray that he's such.
I like that.
And like I'm saying, like you both were saying, there's a human element behind this. So they have to give him assurance, and the Flyers will definitely do that. That's not even a question. The question begins as to how much, because where I'm getting at is that the cap was supposed to go up from close to 82 million this year, 82.2, and it was supposed to go up to anywhere around $84.5 million. So it could have went up, approximately a few $1 million, which would have really helped the Flyers because right now they would have $3 million worth of cap. Approximately.
Right now we're at 70,000 under the cap.
Right, exactly, and that's what I mean. So, this $2 million could have been a huge. It doesn't seem like it, but that is another player on the roster.
But the cap's not going to go up, right, because of the loss of revenue. I mean, every million matters, right?
And that's where I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The cap is not going to go up. It's either going to stay stagnant, where remain as is, which I think is going to happen. I can't see them reducing the cap because teams they're so against the cap right now, like the Flyers situation. The majority of teams are in the Flyers situation right now. Honestly, in this particular time, and this is why I think that the Devils really become a threat here. And Josh, you know what I'm talking about because you're a big draft guru. They have so many darn draft.
I do want to correct. I'm sorry. I want to interrupt. So I just realized something while we were talking about that. I do think, and this could be wrong, so we probably should check it. But I believe the NHLPA has an option to increase the salary cap, regardless. I think it's up to 5%. I could definitely be wrong about this, so we could be going down a rabbit hole, and I'm making myself look stupid. But I do remember something that they do have an option to. And yes, because I think it's partially why everybody thought we would enter another lockout, because they were artificially inflating the cap by 5%, even though revenues weren't equaling an increase of up to 5%. So we were artificially increasing the cap slightly higher than it was supposed to go. So theoretically, I mean, one that could fight the cap from going down, which I don't think would ever happen, but they could still force the cap up slightly. Maybe $1 million, something really small. That's potentially out there as well, I guess, right? But
I guess where I'm getting at is that they have to be very careful with these RFAs, and the RFAs are like holding out as well. Like, I'm sure Chuck Fletcher has had conversations, and he admitted, last week he hasn't really discussed in length to any of the 4 RFAs, which actually, Yariv, you and I talked about it earlier, and Josh, we did as well. Sort of makes a little bit of sense, in a sense to where the RFAs are still trying to feel if they're coming back or not. So it's not as easy as just saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to re-sign, where their numbers could possibly get better for this season, and it could possibly make their numbers go up.
Yeah, there's that too.
For instance, if the season does reconvene, Nolan Patrick, to me right now, for himself, he would only want a 1-year deal worth the same contract that he has now, $925, because he's banking on himself. He knows he's so darn talented because he is. And I also believe he is a cornerstone in the franchise as well. But I don't think that Nolan Patrick wants to sign a deal, that's, okay, I'm going to sign for he's going to want a contract near Nico Heeshire's money. Now, I don't think that he could get what Nico Heeshire did this season because of what happened. So I see him realistically taking a 1-year $925 and saying, okay, I know I'm talented. I know I can stay healthy, and that's what I'm going to do next season. I'm going to come back and freaking kill it, in which he will, because that's just the type of player he is.
I think he'll get a slight raise, but I could see that. You know what I mean? Maybe
I don't know about
1.5
$925, but I can definitely,
The 1 year.
I could see him between anywhere from one year deal, anywhere between $1 to $3 million, $1 to $4 million.
Yeah,
it's big range, but he has leverage.
Yeah, he does because he's talented. That's the problem, Jamey. Right? He's worth a lot.
Uber talented.
No question, he is.
Even as a third line center, he's worth.
Oh yeah,
he's worth $3 million.
Oh my God.
Like Josh.
He would be one of the most valuable third line centers.
In the first 2 years in your league, you just don't pot 26 goals because you're not talented. You did something right. The NHL is the toughest league in the world. Joel Farabee, has tallied how many? 8, right? And yes, the season was short, and yes, he was sent down to Lehigh, a few times. And I'm just saying.
No, I think it's a very fair point. Patrick was recovering from an injury.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Recovering
Absolutely.
from hernia surgery, and both seasons per se.
I think it's a solid point. Yeah.
So like Joel Farabee is very talented. This guy is going to be a hell of a player as well, and he only tallied 8 goals. And in the season cut short and stuff. And where I'm getting at is they're both very talented players.
Right.
In terms of Phil Myers, I'm with both of you. I give him term. I try to give him term as much as possible. The question is, would he? And I don't know. The Flyers are in a unique position right now. We have seen this pandemic. This is unlike anything in years past. So the economic uncertainty really might just say, okay, I am going to take term. Like, we're in a weird situation here, something that we've never been a part of. So being that we went through this pandemic, players are saying, okay, what if they go through a pandemic again next year, and then next year, and then next year, and the season gets going. Will my value deter? I'm just saying, this is
sounds like the end of the world.
Yeah, no, not the end of the world per se, but like, this is serious stuff. What is going on? I have never, and you guys are.
They typically don't happen back-to-back years.
Sports.
Historically, they happen about every decade. Like the N1H1 virus is about 12 years ago.
Just shut down sports, like major outlets. I'm talking about. This isn't just.
We've never seen anything like this.
I
do say this, so Jay. Maybe we move on because we don't have that much time left here, and we have a big topic that I think we want to talk about here. We got our last topic here.
There's a few because Josh needs one for himself. Just one segment for himself, and that's the draft. That's what he really wants to talk about. But he is a prospect guru, Yariv. So I think you are right. I think this dude needs to talk about Wyatt Kalnick. Josh, I know you've been scouting this guy from like probably since he was like 10 years old. So what's up with Wyatt?
Not maybe since he was 10 years old, but definitely since he got drafted by the Flyers in the 7th round in 17. He's a really uber talented defenseman. He's got size and he really has leadership ability. That's one thing that the Flyers look for in a defenseman. You look at the skill from the back end, and you look at the guys we have. We got guys with really great defensive awareness and really, really high hockey IQ. This kid brings it. He wears the captain at Wisconsin, and he's put up at least 30 points the past 3 years, 20 points as a defenseman in 40-some games each season. 25 points in 37 games, 25 points in 37 games, 28 points in 6 this year. He's consistent. He's very, very strong on the puck. And with his frame of like 6'1", I believe, like 180, he really, really shows good value at a pick like 7th round for sure.
I agree. I mean, so what is your comparable for Wyatt?
I see, like, this is put me on the spot here. I'm trying to think of like a perfect. I see like a smaller Roman Yossi almost.
Oh,
two-way guy, strong the puck.
Yeah.
He's not as big. May not have the same style of like point production. Like Yossi was the second leading point getter in the for defensemen in the league this year, but he really shows like that kind of like ability and talent when he plays. When you see him at Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not a bad comparison. I mean, in the play style and everything, right? Because he's got a two-way game, ability to have an offensive game. I don't know, like you said, I don't know if he's an offensive defenseman at the NHL level. He will be at the AHL level, in my opinion, for sure. But at the NHL level, definitely a two-way, puck-moving type of guy. Maybe not a number one like Yossi, but I could see him. I mean, I could totally see the guy panning out to be a 5 or 4 in the NHL. A guy can move the puck.
No, absolutely. A solid 5-4, maybe play second power play, maybe even run him on a penalty kill.
I mean, he could end up being better. He could end up being better for all we know. I mean, he was much better than we expected. I mean, I can say that as a 7th-round pick, watching the guy at Dev Camp, I mean, he sticks out of the crowd easily sticks out of the crowd. And that's amongst other defensemen who are his age, sometimes older, even like Ronnie Attard, who I really like. I still thought Kalynuk outperformed him. I thought Kalynuk outperformed over everybody I saw at this recent Dev Camp. I mean, outside of, I thought it was like Cam York was by far the best. Then second in my mind was Kalynuk. And then third was Zamula. And that's kind of how I saw it. And I saw Ronnie Attard was right there with him as well. Yeah. And then Mason Millman, he actually took a while to get started in the year, so it actually makes sense. But obviously it's not everything, right? There's plenty of time for these guys to prove themselves. But just early glimpses. I mean, Kalynuk really, I really liked what I saw from him in person. Just the skating, the puck moving, the shooting. It just seemed pro level at everything already.
He's a towering defenseman. He's a towering guy. I mean, the guy, standing on his skates, he's a very tall, defenseman, and it is unbelievable how he fell down to the 7th round. But that's where I was talking about, in prior weeks, Josh. I don't know if you listen, like for the past few weeks or whatever. I don't know what exactly episodes you were listening to, but for the past few weeks, as long as you get drafted in the NHL, it doesn't matter what round you get drafted in. You look at Tanner Lazinski's 6th-round draft pick. Oscar Lindblom was a 5th-round draft pick. There's guys being drafted. Cooper Marotti, who the Flyers flipped, for a 3rd-round, draft pick, for Kirill Usamega. I mean, it is unbelievable. All you got to do is get drafted in the NHL. 6th, 7th, doesn't matter. Hidden gems. Ivan Fedotov, 7th round. The dude, he stands at 6'8". 6'8", this guy. He is a tall freaking goaltender who is 205 pounds. The guy takes up like the majority of the net. He doesn't even have to move to make every save, But that's what I'm saying. Some of these guys, Jordan Koo. I was very high on Jordan Koo. He got drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights, a few years ago he used to play for the London Knights. And the guy is just, a really good goaltender. He got drafted in the 7th round. All you have to do is get drafted in today's day and age, and I think that you will be fine. And Kalnick is that guy. And could he possibly be a top pairing, defenseman with Ivan Provorov? That remains to be seen. Definitely a middle pairing. And, Josh, I liked your player comparable. I put you on a spot because I call you the prospect guru, so I want to know if you're comparable right, spot on or not. And I think Roman Josi is a very good, comparable to Kalynuk. Now, that is now comparables. Will he be that guy in the future? Like Yariv and I have talked about millions of times, every prospect is different. Just because, like Nolan Patrick is a second overall pick, it doesn't matter, like we said, it doesn't matter where you get selected today. You could turn in to be a very good player, regardless of what round you're drafted in. I think it's a lot of pressure to be drafted top 5. And that's why I think so highly of Nolan Patrick. The guy put up, 26 goals. Sorry to go a little off tangent and back to him, but the dude is just a really good freaking player. And I don't think, I think at times that people don't really see how good of a damn player this kid was. And, he is like a mini Sean Couturier, in my opinion. He plays the same style game as Sean Couturier does. He's a defensive, player first. So why shouldn't he get time to develop like Sean Couturier got time to develop offensively? So, but that's a little off topic. The Flyers are in, of course, the playoffs. So let's see who the best team the Flyers would match up against. And let's ask Josh and Yariv. Yariv, start us off because I'm telling you, the Flyers were red hot coming in, to the suspension. And yes, they lost, the 9-game winning streak, to the Boston Bruins. But they were riding high. So they were 9-1 in their last 10 before the game against Tampa Bay. Of course, we all know what happened. The season was suspended and whatnot. Who would the Flyers match up against, assuming, boom, today, the Flyers would have been playing, the season ended Saturday. Let's just presume that the standings were frozen as they are now. So the Flyers would have been playing, Pittsburgh. And it doesn't mean that you think that they had to match up well against Pittsburgh. Who was your ideal first round matchup, against?
Like, who could the Flyers, who would the best match up with if the Flyers, win the playoffs this year? So, I mean, I've thought about this before. I mean, for me, particularly, I really wanted the Washington Capitals. And for several reasons. One, I think it would be fun to beat the team that everybody thought was the best team at the beginning of the year, because I think the Flyers are definitely capable of beating them. And I think a lot of what the Capitals were riding on is what Bruce Boudreau Bruce Boudreau? Am I saying the wrong coach? No, not Bruce Boudreau. Sorry. Who's the coach of the Islanders? Excuse me, Barry Trotz. God. Jesus. Sorry about that. So Barry Trotz instilled in the team. I think a lot of that has kind of waned, kind of left the team over time, and I think the culture is starting to change, and I think you saw that with the team. Doesn't mean that they're not a top-tier team that isn't capable of winning the Stanley Cup, but I don't think they play that perfect game anymore. I don't think the emphasis on defense is there to the same degree as it was with Trotz. I think the organization, again, the buy-in isn't there to the same degree. And we saw that this year. We saw some ups and downs with that organization. And that is somebody that the Flyers could target. The Flyers have enough talent to beat any team in the East, in my opinion, in a playoff matchup. Obviously, Tampa Bay and Boston would have been tougher, but especially in the Metro, capable of beating any of those teams in a 7-game series. And I think the Capitals are kind of ripe for it, because I don't think they play a perfect game. I think you can get under their skin. I think they would make plenty of mistakes in the playoffs. And I think the Flyers are deep enough to shut them down. They would be my top choice. And I think having a Holtby versus Hart type of competition would also be really cool just for the story, right? So that would be fun. But I think that's something, be a really nice rivalry. And, to see Ovechkin against Giroux, just kind of that classic rivalry a little bit. I think the Flyers could take that one. I think they could get under the Caps' skin and then kind of show the world that they're ready to take over.
And Holtby and Hart are friends, off the ice.
Which is why it's fun.
Yeah. That's very interesting there. And I think it would be hard for both goaltenders. They're both emotionally attached to one another. And of course, hockey, like any sport, is a competitive, game, and you got to put your friendships aside and stuff, but you never want to, beat the heck out of your, good friend, or maybe you do want to beat the heck out of your good friend, and maybe get the one up on them, right? So that's an interesting matchup, and you give some really good insight there. And I the only player on the Caps, and Josh and I talked about this, was Tom Wilson. It's a player that every team covets, but every team hates because they don't. Well, fans. It's a player that they hate, but they, if they were on your team, they would love. And because he's a hell of a guy, the guy could pot a big goal. He could score goals, plus lay a big hit and fight. I mean, what he is, a Philadelphia type player. Yes, I mean,
he's a bully.
Like, he would be one player that I would be afraid to match up with, in my opinion, in the first round, because I think that he could do some number, to some of our players and whatnot. But I do agree with you. I think that the Flyers are a more talented team, and they were able to manhandle. And I say manhandle Washington this season, because they did manhandle them at times. What was one score? 5-2, and then
7-2.
Wasn't there another?
5-2
or something, huh?
Yeah, 5-2 and 7-1 or 7-2. They've put on goals.
I mean, it is crazy. And when you're talking about playing against one of the best goaltenders in the league, in my opinion, in Braden Holtby, because in my opinion he is a top 5 goaltender in the NHL, to shellac him like that and wow, I mean that was impressive. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Yariv. I think that that would be a very good team to match up with. Josh, do you have a team that the Flyers would match up well against?
A team that I think, so this is kind of going off what would happen. This is if the Flyers maybe say were to win the division and play a wild card team. I would love for the Flyers to match up against the Hurricanes. I don't know what I see. I see center matchup against center matchup in this. That's one of my favorite things. When you have Aho going up against either Giroux or Couturier, and then Hayes going up against the newly acquired Trocheck, and then 2 really good defenses going at it, and then the return of Peter Mrazek, it just seems like a whole story that seems like it's going to be fun. And I would love to single-handedly stop the Carolina Hurricanes storm surging after every game. And I just would love for the Flyers to sweep the floor with them.
I like that.
Do you think the Flyers could do some type of storm surge if they did play them?
I think they would do it just to mock them. I don't know if they'd keep it up, but some kind of thing where they all get center and they play around a dodgeball would be funny.
Yeah, dodgeball, or see the Hollywood Kevin Hayes do something in terms of camp, baby.
That would be hilarious. I feel like Kevin Hayes would run it.
Yeah, or maybe something, maybe take TK, DDT him to the ice or something like that, or something, you know what I mean? Something crazy like that. Maybe they pick up Carter Hart and tombstone him into the ice or something. No, I wouldn't want my
with Carter Hart
ice, right? But some type of fun atmospheres or something. But yeah, I think that would be a phenomenal matchup there, and I think there's a lot of good storylines there in terms of Rod Brind'Amour coming back. Trying to do is a heck of a coach, and regardless of what, it is unbelievable what he's done in just his second season with the Hurricanes and having them, in the playoffs yet once again, and it's just a really good storyline out of there, and I just think the Flyers would manhandle Carolina. I think they sweep them. In my opinion, I just think, it's not because Brind'Amour's a bad coach. It's not because of that. To me, it all lies in with goaltending, and I think the Flyers' goaltending is far better than Carolina's. I also believe that the Carolina isn't as deep as they were last year, in my opinion. I think the loss of Dougie Hamilton really hurts them, and I don't think even if the season reconvened, he would come back. So I think that is a huge loss there. And when you're losing one of your, that's like the Flyers losing Pronger. It took us how many years to finally avenge the loss of Pronger, and Dougie Hamilton, I'm not saying is a Pronger type player, I'm not saying he is as good as what Pronger was in his prime, but Dougie Hamilton was a really good defenseman for the Carolina Hurricanes. And,
goal-scoring defenseman.
Yeah, exactly.
Big piece of that top two.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You're losing at least 20 goals for the year. He's a good player. He's a good player. He's made it, a really good NHL career. My team would be the Pittsburgh Penguins. And why? Because I had this damn dartboard, and it's Metropolitan Divisional foes on the outside, and a picture in the middle is Sidney Crosby as my bullseye. And I could tell you I obliterated that picture in 20 minutes. And, so mine is the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I think that we would win I can't say we because I do not play for them, but I can say they would win in 5. I can say they would win in 5. I just think the Flyers, again, have better goaltending. I think Carter Hart and Brian Elliott have formed a really good relationship on and off the ice, and, Carter Hart has said that. Carter Hart, they both support one another. They're friends on and off the ice, and, Brian thinks the world of Carter, and Carter thinks the world of Brian. And I think that both of them, Brian Elliott did not play for 8 days, and he beat one of the best teams in hockey, the Washington Capitals at the time. He beat them 5-2. That was pretty impressive to not see rubber in 8 days. And I think that if Carter Hart had a bad game, I think Brian Elliott could come in, right the ship, and possibly may even steal the game. And vice versa. I think, if Brian Elliott got the toe, then, Carter Hart could come in, whoever. Of course, Carter Hart is our guy, and he would be the guy. I just think Carter Hart's a better goaltender than Matt Murray. I think Carter Hart, is a better goaltender than Tristan Jarry, in my opinion. Too. And,
Easily.
and in the playoffs, we have talked about it in the past. All of us at Flyers Nitty Gritty, the playoffs are a different atmosphere. It is intense hockey. It is shift after shift. They go balls to the wall. And goaltending and defense really lead the championships in the NHL. You look at Jonathan Quick in 2012. His numbers, I think he finished with like a 1.92 or something like that, GAA, for the entire tournament. And, that's something that, is unheard of. And I think Carter Hart could come in. I think he would shut the Pens out the first game. I think the Flyers would win 6-0. And, and I'm sorry to say that, but, whatever. People can call me crazy. I don't give a darn. But I just think that
it's very confident. It's very confident. I like it.
Very confident in this
team.
It's
a little trait.
I was so confident in this team. The Flyers finished 12-1 in their last 13 games, and I don't give a darn who debate me. Awesome. Let's go. And they could have finished 13-0. And they could have finished 13-0. Whatever. I don't care. If they could have finished, man, they could have been on a 22-game winning streak. It doesn't matter if they didn't lose, to darn Boston.
I would kill for a 3-game win streak right now.
I'd kill for a game right now.
I would kill for a loss almost at this point. I'd rather watch us lose to the Penguins. No, I take that back. Actually,
listen, Never mind. I'm so confident in the Flyers right now that I'm going to Wendy's after this.
I think they can beat them in 6. I think 5's a little aggressive, but I do think the Flyers can beat them in 6. I think in the past people would have picked the Penguins. I think this year it would have been a little bit different. I think the Flyers might have been the favorite in that tournament. I think there's still. You know what? I think Philly journalists would have picked the Penguins, and the league would have picked the Flyers. I think that's what would have happened.
But I just
this time the league would have been right.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
And the Flyers would have beat them in 6. And then everybody would have been shocked. And then we would have been like, yeah, it's not that shocking. They're a better team.
But I think, the Penguins get healthy. Jake Gensel, they would get back, and stuff. But I don't think
he's a huge loss for them. It's a big loss. Just like you said, like Dougie Hamilton.
Oh, yes.
We had our own big losses this year, but.
And I'm going to be honest, for what Pittsburgh's done, and this is not to discredit them by any means, saying that the Flyers would win in 5. I just think the Flyers. I just think that the Flyers, you look at up and down their lineup, there's not one weakness in their lineup. And I think that was a buzzsaw coming in, and I think they'd be a buzzsaw coming back. The way that they're a well-oiled, coached machine, and, they were getting really good goaltending. The defense was playing, phenomenal hockey. I just think that they were really gelling as a unit on and off the ice, and I think that really carries them. And I think there was a lot of uncertainty in terms of Pittsburgh with the new additions. that was sort of a new team over there. It's easy to just say, okay, cool, they got Patrick Marleau, who used to be really good. Oh, cool, they added Connor Sheary too. Oh yeah, cool. They added this player, they added that player, they added Jason Zucker, then and whatever. But when you keep adding, it doesn't mean you're adding the right parts. And to me, the Flyers didn't have to add because they were already a good team. And Pittsburgh had to add because they were hurt, and they still won games. I mean, they didn't lose a game without Crosby. That was pretty impressive. Jake told me that.
It shows that they are still a good team.
Oh, yeah, they are. And even with this series, I think they would still be a good team. I just think that Pittsburgh this year was running into a buzzsaw, and that, honestly, they were a little tired coming in. They didn't know, because with all the injuries and coming back, it's not just you reform that chemistry that you once had. I mean, this is a whole new lineup for them to get used to, too. And that's where I'm getting at. Like, Gensel coming back, he wouldn't know what line. I'm sure he's going to the top two lines. But what line? They could have some different players that he's not familiar with playing, So, and like I said, Gensel was a very good player. Crosby's a very good player. Malkin's a very good player. And it's no discredit to Matt Murray or Tristan Jarry. I just think that the Flyers are, a better – I just think they're a better team. Yeah, I'll say it. I think they are a better team. I do. So, and I'll end with that. So, and Yariv, if you're good, if you have nothing more to chime in, we could, send Josh off. He did a great job. This guy, I'm telling you, we are really blessed to have a prospect guru like Josh. And if you want to give, a few players before you send off to keep an eye on for the draft, feel free to do such, because I know you're chomping at the bit for that. So before you send off, you could give a few the fans. We love you all very much for supporting us. Josh, give some people some outlook to who look for in the upcoming NHL draft.
Alrighty, yeah, I'll go towards a little bit of a couple of top guys, and then maybe one lower end guy. But the top, you could see, depending on picks, if we went forward, keep an eye out for Noel Gunler out of Germany. Defense, keep an eye out for someone like Braden Schneider or Justin Barron. One's a U.S. guy, one's a Canadian guy. They're both really strong on the puck defenseman. One's right-handed, one's left-handed. Both sides are needed.
Righties, for sure.
Yeah, righties are the biggest needs, and that's where Braden Schneider, big puck-moving defenseman, can come in. Lastly, someone like Tag Bertuzzi, who's probably one of my favorite players coming up in this draft. He's the son of Todd Bertuzzi, brother of Tyler Bertuzzi. Right. Oh, yeah. Tag, what a great name. He plays just like Todd and Tyler. Really gritty player, but he can get in. He's not huge as a size, but he can get under people's skin, almost like Konechny, and he's a chirper. So he'd be fun in the orange and black.
It's funny you mentioned that, because somebody asked me that question in the mailbag. What was the biggest area the Flyers needs? And I was thinking like an enforcer type, Tom Wilson, skill player, pot of gold, but tough to protect our assets. Because let's be honest here, we're getting into a situation here to where the Flyers have to protect their assets. They have to protect Morgan Frost. They have to protect the Claude Giroux. They got to protect the Jake Voraceks. You don't want TK fighting, although TK can, but you don't want Nolan Patrick taking a hit or whatever. You know what I mean? You want to protect your assets. You want to go after one of these guys. That's it. We're going to take out two of your players. That's what's going to happen. That's what's, going to have to happen, or whether it's a good hit or not, you're going to have to know, hey, you're going to take a run at this. You're going to take a run over our guy. That's it. This is what's going to happen. Bertuzzi's going to come in and
ringing the bell.
Yeah.
One more name I'll throw out there, just to throw a name in the hat. Igor Chibrakov. He is 6'7", 200 pounds, defenseman. The dude's an absolute tree out there. He would just be a great value pick, maybe in the 6th or 7th round, but he just looks like a massive wingspan defenseman who could really play.
That is a nice pick later on. I like that.
Yeah, he's projected 6th, 7th round, so cool. Almost like a Kubalik pick.
Could be a Morin type of guy to bring in.
Yeah.
Another guy of that ilk.
We talk about Ron Hextall, having success with the 6th and 7th rounds, like Tanner Lazinski, Wyatt Kolanuk and stuff like that. But like Chuck Fletcher, Igor Zerduk, who plays for the Victoriaville Tigres, had a solid season. Once again, he was hurt and still put together 40 points in 50 games. I mean, that was quite impressive. This guy scores 16 goals. Bryce Brodzinski, coming up with the University of Minnesota, is a person to keep an eye on. He again is like a Igor Zorgaduk type, who's a natural goal scorer. So, Chuck Fletcher seems to compare to. You're looking at Roddy Ross, was drafted late, and stuff like that. Goaltender from the Seattle Thunderbirds, for the Flyers. So Chuck Fletcher seems to try to take a page out of Ron Hextall's playbook there. So, send us off, Josh. Where can our great viewers find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Josh Katz Philly. That's Kats with an S, not a Z. And you can find my work on FlyersNittyGritty.com or at Flyers Nitty.
Sounds great.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah, follow us at Flyers Nitty. That's Flyers with a Nitty of the K. I'm Yariv, Wolok on Twitter. Pretty much on everything. You can follow me. Jamey, send us off here and say goodbye to our lovely fans.
We love you all. Thank you so much. Let's go Flyers, baby. Listen, we was smacked ends 4-1. I swear, I'm telling you all. Love you all. Find me at Jamey Baskow at Flyers Nitty. Take care.
Thank you.